Crossroads Community Church. We are so glad that you decided to check us out. You are invited to visit us in person at 9 or 11 a.m. on Sunday mornings. If you would like to partner with us in our mission to connect others with God, you can visit us on our website at www.crossroads.cc and click on the Online Giving tab. We hope you enjoy this sermon from our most recent service.
I hope so. It's going to be a great day here at Crossroads. We're so glad you made it in with us. In Mark chapter 16, some of Jesus' last words on earth were this. And he told them, go. And many of you are saying, what's the rest of that verse? It says, go into all the world and preach the good news to everyone. And of all the things that Jesus could say, he chose that as like the final message to people. And today we've been in this series called Going Viral, and we've been talking a lot about the whys and what the good news is, and defining it and studying it and hoping to understand it. But today we're going to kind of shift our series into another gear, which is the hows. And we're going to invite some people who are on mission trips with us this summer to come up on stage, so you guys can come on up. And today we're just going to be talking about how they did what they did, and just answering the call to missions, and to look at this verse and them to take it to heart and say, and then Jesus told them, go, and to see how they put themselves in positions to be used by God. And so we're going to ask them some questions today. So you guys listen up for the answers. There'll be some pictures up on the screen. Oh, there's a picture of me up on the screen. One of my favorite things in the world to do is spin basketballs and spin anything they'll spin. And so one year I was hurt during a basketball season, and I couldn't really do anything but stand on crutches. And so I learned how to spin basketballs, and never knew that God would use that as really like the greatest kid draw in the world, right? I don't speak any other languages other than English. I just walk into communities and start spinning basketballs, and kids start showing up. So anyway, that's one of the things that I use. Not so much theology, but just that. So Dan, we have lots of people on stage here. Yeah. Oh, there you go. Got the mic. I forgot to give that to you. My fault. But Dan and his entire family went with him to Nicaragua. And I think, is it on? Green light? Yes. And we called them Team Thompson. And so Team Thompson represent, where you at down there? You down there? There they are. There's a couple. I was like, all right. Yeah, they're there. So Dan, tell us how you got on a mission trip with Crossroads. You all are a fairly new family, I would say. Many of you, how many of y'all know Dan? Awesome. 6 of you. So this is Dan and Erica, and their last name is Thompson, and they're attenders here. And anyway, so tell us how you got onto a trip with Crossroads.
So we are relatively new to this community. We're a military family, and of course, every time that we move to a new installation, we end up having to find a new place of worship. And so while we were in that searching process, the Lord had put this incredibly heavy burden on my heart that somehow, some way, I was going to be taking my family on a mission trip. For whatever reason, I really felt as though this was something really critical for our family to be a part of. Our children are getting older, where they are at that point of really having an impression about the worldview and just a heart for service, a heart for the Lord. And so what better way to send our children on mission? Well, secretly, God had been saying the same thing to Erica and putting that strong and heavy burden on her heart. And so as we come together and we realize that we both share that heavy burden, we said, we have to find a church that shares that same common vision. And so as we're visiting around to various communities, we said, God is calling us to Crossroads. We don't understand why or how or, all the pieces behind that piece. But when we first showed up, the very first Sunday for Crossroads, they were unveiling their trip for the first time to Nicaragua. You can't write the script. You can't be able to see how God puts all those pieces together by putting that call on our hearts, and then through that obedience, allowing God to just unfold for you this perfect plan, the plan for Nicaragua. But God not only calls us, but he also confirms the call. And so one of the apprehensions for me was, how do I take an entire family on a trip to Nicaragua? I mean, it costs several $1,000s to be able to make that happen. But Erica reassured me that God's got this, right? He not only calls, he equips the called. Right. And so he was able to provide, resources came in, the love of Christ just really poured into our hearts. And he confirmed the call also through I had an airman that I had been mentoring for the last 10 years who has been called to missions, and yet because he's single and he doesn't have too many resources, the resources that came into us, we had some extra funds, and God was able to bring us back together after 10 years, and we were able to continue that mentor process out there in the field. So God just continues to confirm his call. All we have to do is be obedient to that call.
Yeah, thanks so much, Dan. And it was awesome to see you guys. Anybody that says we can't do it, Noah, will you stand up right here? Stand up, man. Like Noah went to Nicaragua, didn't get lost, okay? Nothing happened to him. He's healthy. Okay, our youngest team member. So if you think you might be too scared to go to Nicaragua, come talk to Noah, okay? Or Belize for that matter. So Erica, as a member of Team Thompson, I saw you in action as team mom and organizer, and the one who got patted down the most at the airport too. Yeah, that was you took the brunt of all that for us.
I was a big threat.
You were a threat. And so tell us, you headed up one of our teams in VBS. So tell us about that, and also how you were a part of Team Thompson there.
Sure. Yeah. So I am the mom of Team Thompson, and
it's a new picture above you, by the way.
Oh, there we are at VBS. We're singing. Anyways, that was a fun time. But yeah, so I am the mom of Team Thompson, and we had a fabulous time. And I just love, like Dan shared, how God called us as a family. And there was a time where we were, okay, God, you've called us, but now are you going to equip us? Are you going to give us the resources that we need to be able to go on mission? And it was just wonderful to see how God provided and brought in all of those resources. And then also I was privileged to be able to lead up the VBS part of our team. VBS was such a blessing, not only to the children, but to ourselves. By the end of the week, we had 170 children come and be a part of VBS. We would go door to door each morning and just be able to share with the people that we were going to have this in the afternoon. And so 170 children ended up coming. A lot of the time, it looked like pure chaos. And sometimes it felt like pure chaos. But this picture represents, so during VBS one day, the little kids cannot get water for themselves, so it's really hot out there, and when they need water, they need to find somebody who is larger, an adult or an older child, who can go and turn that wheel, and you turn the wheel for about 2 minutes, and then water starts flowing out of this little pipe. Well, that was the first day, and I was just so mesmerized watching all the children swarm around the pump that I took this picture. But about the third or the fourth day, I had the privilege of pumping water for a bunch of small children. They came up to me and they said, "Agua, agua," and they kept pointing to the pump. And so I was like, okay, I think I can help you. So I get out there and I start turning that wheel, and it takes about 2 minutes. And let me tell you, it is quite the workout to get that thing going. But all of those children, once the water started coming out, they all took their hands and scooped up the water and were able to drink for themselves. But there was this one little girl, and her name happened to be Erica, and she was 2 years old, and she was too little to be able to scoop up the water and not get all wet and just be able to accomplish that goal for herself. So one of the boys ended up holding out his hands, and the water flowed into his hands, and little Erica came over and drank out of his hands. And it was just a beautiful illustration to myself and a reminder of how God is the living water. He holds out his hands and he says, "Come, my child, and drink." And just what a wonderful illustration and a reminder that God loves us and is there for us, and all we have to do is be there and willing to accept it.
Wow, what a blessing. Awesome. And so even in another part of the world, almost simultaneously, we had a team in Belize, and they were doing VBS as well. So Marianne, tell us a little bit about that and how God used you as just someone who was willing to go in Belize.
Yeah. So in Belize, VBS is challenging, as it seems to be in Nicaragua. We start from scratch even before we go. We have to plan out the whole thing and, figure out what we're going to do, when we're going to do it, how we're going to do it. And Laura and Julie created a 3-day curriculum for the Armor of God, and were able to come up with some crafts that the kids could use or create themselves once we leave, either for themselves or for friends, just cardboard and yarn and paper plates and aluminum foil. Other challenges were getting the word out. There's no mass media. There was no Sunday service to announce it or Facebook or anything. And the other thing is who's going to help? I mean, we're at the very beginning of planning the trip. So far, it's 3 of us going, so, what's going to happen? So eventually, we get down there, we print out 60 flyers, deliver them door to door on dirt roads, fighting off wild animals and such that were trying to get us. And some of the parents only spoke Spanish, so that creates another problem. We don't have a map to say, this is where it is. There's no street names. So it's, you know where the Chinese stores, what they call it, Chino 61. You go up the road, you go left, you go right, it's a blue house. Okay. We hope you're there. So some of the neighborhood kids were able to interpret for us, so that was wonderful. So, we had a team of 10. Only 9 was able to show up for the first day because some people work really hard and didn't feel good later on the day. That was me. So first day, we set up at 4:30. We're going to start at 5, but it's Belize, so everybody goes slow. So about 5:15, 5:20, the team starts. There's 9 of them and 12 children, so it's pretty good ratio going on there. Day 2, again, we show up at 4:30 to set up. There's a handful of kids hanging out with the pastor's kid. And enough kids show up that we can start on time at 5. By the end of that hour, we had about 20 kids there. Third day, before we can even start, our missionary down there, Margaret Mooney, she's calling saying, "Pastor wants to know when you're coming. There's a bunch of kids waiting here at his house." Okay, so we get down there at 4:30. We have to start early because there's so many of them. And by the end of that hour, we had almost 40 kids show up for that. So that was pretty awesome.
Awesome. Yeah, and so it's amazing what happens when you just show up in a spot, and start doing stuff and see what happens. And it's always up in the air when you first start. So speaking of being up in the air and door to door, so Sue, tell us how I tricked you into doing your favorite thing in Nicaragua.
Okay, so Paul was very good from the very beginning to tell us, be flexible. It's about flexibility. Always be flexible. He drilled it into us from day one. And so we get to Nicaragua, and he did say we have a choice where we want to serve, but we have to be willing to go help construction if they need it or whatever. So we had construction team, we had VBS, we had men's and women's Bible study, and we had door-to-door. And so I decided to do VBS, but God and Paul had another plan. I did 5 minutes of VBS all week long. And my very last choice would have been door-to-door. Actually, I would have done men's ministry before I would have done door-to-door, because I was really intimidated by the thought of being in a foreign country, going to someone's house uninvited, not speaking their language, trying to have a conversation through an interpreter. All of that was very daunting to me. So sure enough, first morning we get up, and before we're even on the bus, we get word, oh, change of plans for today. We're going to take the construction crew to their job, and the rest of us are going door to door. So there I was having to do door to door. And what we were doing in door to door was going and inviting people to VBS and women's and men's ministry in the afternoon. So we would show up at people's houses and we would talk to them through the interpreter. And we got the chance to actually ask them if they needed prayer for anything. And to a person in Nicaragua, they all either have a physical ailment or a family crisis or some heartache. And so we prayed with a lot of people, and we got to know them and connect with them on a deeper level than just speaking to them in a, teaching sort of way. And so one of the people, there's so many stories, and all the door people have tons of stories. But this is one story. This is Rosa. And the last person that we visited on the first day was Rosa. And she actually had a house that was built by Chosen Children. And it was built 7 months ago for her and her family. She has 4 boys, ranging up to 13. And then she has this little adorable little girl, Marisol. But when Chosen Children built the home for her family, her husband had throat cancer. And 10 days after the home was completed, he passed away. So Rosa had no husband in a country where it's hard enough when your husband has a job with 44% unemployment. It's hard enough for your husband to have a job and support the family, and here she was, a single mom. And so we were able to connect with her. We listened to her. We cried with her. We prayed with her. We were able to come back the next day and to bring soccer ball for the boys and some gifts for her. And we gave little Marisol this dress, which you see her in the picture. And the final day of the afternoon program, she brought her in the dress, and so we all got to enjoy seeing her in that. And so it was my favorite part by far of everything we did. And so I would say to you that if God's calling you, and He will, and He does, to do something, even if it's the very last thing on your list of what you want to do it, because you will be blessed immensely. And the end of that first day, I was lying in bed and I was thinking, wait a minute. How did all those people know to go to VBS and Bible study in the afternoon? How would they have found that out if we hadn't gone door to door? So I realized that Paul knew all along that we were going to go door to door, and he hadn't told us because some of us were afraid to go door to door. So thank you, Paul, for tricking me into doing my favorite thing.
What happens in Nicaragua and believes stays in Nicaragua and believes. So I knew you would give me grace and forgiveness for that. So Rex, you were part of the construction team and heading that up, you and Teresa. So tell us a little bit about that and how you guys worked as such a great team to get a house and a bathroom built, and Sai's going to share a little bit about that.
Well, first, at the first meeting that we had here before we left, I was told that I had volunteered to be the leader of that. And I was like, oh, okay. And but you have Teresa and Greg are going to be on the team with you. I was like, okay, that's better. And when we got down there, there was no plan. We had no information of what we were going to be doing.
So I stuck a picture of you in here.
Oh.
This is my favorite. This is a sexy man right here. I just want you to know right now, sexy single man right here.
That's some good pineapple. Let me tell you, that's some really good pineapple.
Okay. Sorry. Okay.
But we got out there and we started we just saw where we were going to put this house, and it was going to be 15 by 15, and I was like, well, what am I supposed to do? And Carlos said, just make sure that all the tasks get done. I had no list of any task, but he said, make sure that the house is going to be square by measuring from hole to hole, and I did that I don't know how many times, and all of a sudden when we got ready to put the frame of the house up, the holes were not exactly in the right place. So, be flexible. And so we wound up digging the holes bigger, and we eventually got the frame of the house up. And then we started putting these siding on the house, and that was a chore in itself because we had these 3-inch screws that had to go, self-tapping screws that you had to drill through the sheet metal and the metal frame of the house, and that was difficult. Then we started putting the roof up on it, and one of the translators, his name was Alex, he seemed to be the lightest one to get up on the roof, but he was up there with shorts, and I was just thinking the whole time, a cat on a hot tin roof. And but he got up there and he did the job well, and we started putting we had to put all the concrete in for the floor, and thank you to Lisa, Justin, and Ben, and others and Rebecca that were mixing concrete. And one day the concrete started setting up really a little fast because we mixed it a little early. And Conception, which was the father of the house that we built for, he comes out with this bowl of water and he just starts sprinkling it on the concrete that was already kind of hardened. And he told Ben, turn it over. And all of a sudden, this concrete just came back to life. It was no longer hard. It started softening up, so that way we were able to fill in the floor and pour the floor and make it to the end of the job without having to be short on materials. So it was really good that Conception wanted to really get his hands in there and help out. But we were basically, we're here to build this house for you. And at the very end of it, we all put our names up here, as you can see, and we were able to dedicate and pray over the house and dedicate the house to them because it's 8 or 9 of them that live in the one house, and it's only a 15 by 15. So it was really a big blessing to them that they had a house made out of steel that's going to last forever, versus the house that they were staying in, which was, just wood posts that they had put in the ground that had been there and started rotting and stuff. So,
yeah. And so Cy got to see a little bit. Thank you so much, Rex. Cy got to see another angle of that. We also did a baño, which is a giant hole in the ground. We don't have a shot of that, but it was just a big hole that was dug with a shovel. And so he also got to see some of the mixture of our team with the community by doing that bathroom.
Yeah, so as part of the construction crew, we didn't do the same things that our door-to-door and VBS crew did. So we didn't make the connections with the community that everybody else did. On the last day that we were all out there on Thursday, I was sent over to where this bathroom was being built to set up the frame and whatnot. And about halfway through the project, I started hearing all the kids playing over at BBS and whatnot, and it was something that was very enjoyable to hear, something that lifted my heart up a lot. And at the end of the day, when we were cleaning up, I'd put the rest of the tools on the truck and turned around, and there was just giant sea of children that spanned the length of the school bus that we had and probably about 30 or 40 feet wide, covering the entire road, just around all of the VBS people as we're trying to get on the bus to leave. And it was honestly a little intimidating for someone who hadn't done VBS all week to see that, but it was amazing to see the fruits of the labor from all the stories I had heard throughout the entire week of, all these kids are coming, we have this giant group of kids coming to hang out with us and see God's love, and it was just amazing. And I encourage all of you to come out and do that at least some point in your life, because it's something you'll never experience here.
Thanks so much, Cy. And then in another part of the world, in Belize, we were also at a construction team, so Mike was involved with that. And so tell us a little bit about construction in Belize.
Okay, so our team, what we were doing for a few days there, we were partner up with another church from North Carolina, and we were working at a school there, and the task at hand, there it is. We were building an open-air auditorium as part of it. And so our task when we were there is, you can see those columns that were there? There was columns all the way around. There was like, I think, 12 of them. We had to mix concrete, do all that, pour them into the columns. This is all manual work. I mean, they had a ladder going up to the column. You had to take a 5-gallon bucket full of concrete, get it up that ladder, and they'd dump it in. And so we were doing that. And also putting up a block retaining wall there. So that's mostly Crossroads people there that are doing that. You can see it's the ladies. They're doing it. We didn't have much experience or anything like that, but we did it. And that wall there, I think the North Carolina church named that the Crossroads Ladies Wall because they did most of that work right there themselves. And so they were lugging blocks, mixing concrete, moving gravel all over the place. And you can see, I mean, they were comfortable in flip-flops and things, so there was not a lot of construction equipment that we had, but it worked out really well. So the story I wanted to share, we didn't have a lot of equipment out there. In fact, I think we only had like 3 shovels. And one of those shovels was just, if you can imagine a spade shovel, and it kind of was half a spade shovel, but it had ridges on it, edges on it. The handle was cracked vertically. It just looked kind of old. I mean, but that's what we had, one of them. And so, if you got stuck with that shovel, it made the job a lot harder. It was just not a very good shovel. So, but it worked. We used it. So Sunday morning, we all went to church at Santa Elena Baptist Church. And the pastor there, Pastor Manny, he was out on the job site periodically helping us out and things. So he brings this shovel with him to church. And his sermon is basically about this shovel and about how appreciative he was of the missionaries that came there. At least I never thought of myself as a missionary, but that was kind of a cool thing to think about that. So he got into his sermon and he starts talking about things like, so this shovel, it's a little bit worn. It's been used a lot. He goes, I'd rather be this shovel than a bright, shiny, brand new shovel, because this shovel has been used by God. It's been used for his purposes, and what's going to come out of it is this open air auditorium here that we were building. He went in and started talking about the people who are going to be saved there. They're talking about future church services, about just family time coming together, kind of like what we do out back here at Crossroads. And it was just a really, really cool story to think about. That shovel, we're just all tools of God. Just bring what we got, and he'll use it for his glory. So kind of cool, too, is we paid for part of that. They actually ran out of money or out of construction equipment while we were there, blocks and gravel and things. And between Marianne and Josh, they just whipped out the money like you couldn't believe and, took care of it and everything. So that's us, Crossroads. You guys built part of that. It's going to be there for a long time. And I just want to say thank you to my team, our team. It was just awesome. You guys are like family to us. I thought we were like, the first church in Acts 2. We did everything together. Yeah. Went around Belize in that white van. Almost got wiped out a few times, but had a great time. Meals together, devotions together. You're like family.
Awesome. And so then as a husband-wife team, you guys got to go and hang out together and serve together, which I think is just so orange of you, right? I mean, it's so orange of you guys to do that as a family. But Sherry, talk a little bit about Martha's House of Hope and how that worked.
There's a place in Belize. It's called Marla's House of Hope, and it's a home for girls that are in protective custody. They've either been taken from their homes because of abuse or removed from sex trafficking. So we pulled up to this house, and it's a house surrounded by barbed wire to keep them in and others out. And I had heard about this home for several years because Crossroads has been going there for several years. And my heart was already there. We had a Christmas party this year, and I told Marianne, my heart's already there. I knew that was my calling. And so when we started planning for this, I'm like, what does God want me to share with these girls? What does he want to tell them? And so this spring we did our women's retreat, which was chosen.
and being chosen by God. And so that's what we chose to take to these girls, that they're chosen, that they're a daughter of the King. So the picture of them, we're not allowed to photograph them, their faces, because they are in protective custody, but we were able to photograph them from the back, and those were their tiaras because they are chosen from God. They're God's princesses. We had like a coronation kind of program for them. We spent 3 days in the Word. They love the Word of God. I was expecting them to be very sad, and they are sad, but they have such a joy because they do have the Lord in their lives, and people are investing in them. And then we wanted to have a fun time. We wanted to let the guys get involved and show them that men can be safe. And so we did Pinewood Derby cars, and they raced them. They painted them. The house mom said it was the most fun that the girls have ever had a group coming in, so that was exciting. I got called into customs because of these Pinewood Derby cars. Come to find out, you're not allowed to bring wood into, they were in my suitcase, you're not allowed to bring wood into Belize, so I had to pay a little fine, more like a bribe.
There you go.
It was going to be $100, but he said he'd let me off with 10.
There you go.
So, and I got to keep the car.
Seems
so
fair.
It was exciting, but it was just these girls, I know you can't see their faces, but 3 were moms. 1 was expecting any day. They took our hearts. Mike wanted to bring several home. I wouldn't let him. But they did take our hearts, and they're just, it's just, you wonder how they got there. We're not allowed to ask questions, but they were joyful, they were loving, and there was lots and lots of tears when we left, and they're just a sweet. I'm glad there's homes like this for girls that are, because it's becoming more and more prevalent in this world, but it was just, I think we were more blessed to be able to go there and talk with and minister to them.
Awesome. Thank you so much for just putting yourself in the position to do that. Tiffany, talk a little bit about what you did with our girls there and the foot washing. And we have about 4 minutes and 14 seconds.
I can talk fast.
Awesome. Do it.
Okay, so the first day that we were there, there's a pavilion that you saw the kids dancing and clapping. That's where VBS was. All of the women would go off to a separate area, and then the men would go to a separate area. The first day that we were there, a lot of the people that were leading them, a lot of us felt really defeated and inadequate, like we weren't successful, we ran out of things to do. It seemed like it didn't go well, and we were worried about the next day. So I came up with the idea that we were gonna wash the women's feet. One of the translators went out and got washcloths and soap and stuff like that so we could do it the next day. The women didn't know that that's what we were gonna do, and the next day when the children, everyone starts at the pavilion together, and then the women get to go off on their own. Pastor Aaron said that he saw the women were actually running when it was time for the women to go to the women's study. They were running and kind of pushing each other to try to get a seat. It was really cool. I didn't notice it, so I'm glad he shared that with me. I didn't do the women's study, Sue and Jennifer did, and I just kind of waited outside with some of the student girls so that we could wash their feet afterwards, and they were so excited. This is a picture of some of them, and as you can tell by the smile on her face, she's never really been treated that way. Like she was so happy. They're very happy, loving people, but they also have a lot of heartache. They have prayer requests such as like alcoholic husbands, they're single moms, in abusive relationships, a lot of the same stuff we have here, but they don't take time for themselves. They don't know that they're beautiful. A lot of the husbands use abusive language and tell them that they're worthless. It's similar to what happens here, but here we have people that can come together and help us, and they don't have that community there. Yeah. All they do is take care of their kids and their husbands, their families. They don't come together like we do here. So Sue and Jennifer really tried to help encourage them to do that going forward. So the feet washing was just an example of how we could love them for who they are, where they are.
Yeah,
just like we do here.
That was awesome. So you're going to pass over to Will. Will, tell us a little bit about sports camp, how you guys had to be so flexible with that, and how you use sports to kind of open some doors.
Yeah.
Quickly.
Well, we had to be really flexible the first day. We it was Craig, me, and Emma were kind of running the sports camp, and on the first day we had to go to the door-to-door, and I was expecting just to go to the sports camp, but kind of like Sue.
Sorry.
It was a little intimidating, but it was good. And while we were at door-to-door, Carlita, the little girl up there, she was following us and wanted to be carried by everyone that was there. And she had this great superpower of being able to increase her weight as you'd carry her.
Yeah.
I don't know how she did it, but it was tiring. But yeah. So we went, during the sports camp, we came in knowing we would lose at soccer, but we didn't know we would lose so terribly.
Yeah.
It was embarrassing. But we had a good time. We set up soccer games. We tried to organize it as best we could, but in the end, we just kind of played with them and had fun. And we did the sports camp for about 3 days.
Yeah. And so, Rob, you got to go to Nicaragua with your sons. And this was an orange trip, and all our trips are designed for families and for people to do together, because we believe that if we just send one person to Nicaragua and they come back all fired up about Nicaragua, it's not as great of an impact if we send families together to go, because then you're in love with that Nicaragua or Belize or wherever else it is forever as a family. And so tell us a little bit about that as we kind of conclude.
Sounds good. So first of all, I'm really grateful to God. I'm so blessed to have 4 really great kids. So I had the privilege of going with my 2 oldest, Will and AJ. AJ, stand up in the back. You're back there.
He's back there.
There's AJ. So God has just blessed us with great kids, and also blessed us with a fantastic church that has an awesome youth group, CSM, and an awesome youth leader in Paul. And so when your kids come home from CSM and they are fired up about going on a missions trip where there is a lot of heat and mosquitoes and weird food and no Wi-Fi, then as a parent you figure out a way to make that happen. So we did, and I ended up going with them, and it was just incredibly powerful to see them at work, to see Will leading a devotion for 40 boys, to see to AJ organizing a group and being thrilled about going door to door and wanting to go to more people and connect with more people. Yeah. It was just an absolute blast. And the students on our trip, I told the team that I had high expectations for the students on our trip. I felt that they would really engage and be full team members, but I really underestimated their contributions. The students on our trip were the key to our success in Nicaragua. They connected with the students in a way that some middle-aged guy is not going to do. And they had brilliant ideas and ways to connect with the kids. The kids just followed them magnetically, and the parents came with that and were blessed accordingly. So I told Paul, if I go again, my first question is going to be, are the students coming?
Yeah. So I just want to thank you guys so much as we wrap up for just, again, putting yourself in a position to be able to go. And I know that was difficult. It was costly. It cost you vacation time. It cost you money. It cost you supplies. It cost you so much. But I want you to know that it was so worth it. Just that it seems like we'll recoup all that. We'll recoup our vacation time, and we'll recoup our money, and it'll all be okay. And but what you guys did for other people this summer will change their life. And so I just want to thank you for that. Let's give them a hand.
And you guys are welcome to go sit down because it's time for the sermon now. So, I knew I'd get one out there somewhere, but I really appreciate the teams that went. We had a goal in January that we shared with the church that we wanted to send 50 people away on trips internationally at our church, and that was a humongous goal. We're a church of 350 to 400, and we're saying that we're going to send 50 of those people away as a huge goal, and the cost of that and all of that. And God showed up, and we didn't quite hit 50, but 45 of you went on the trips this year, which is just I mean, I don't know what the percentage is, but it's, it's 15% of you maybe that went on trips with us. So we're so excited about what God did. And I just want to share with you just a couple of verses, then we're going to worship as we go here. Mark 16:15 has been the verse that we've been sharing through this series. And it says, Jesus said to them, "Go into all the world and preach the gospel to all creation." The gospel being the good news. Jesus says, go. These are some of the last words of Jesus. Go into all the world and preach the gospel. And I read to you last weekend this verse in Romans 10. It says, everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. But how can they call on him to save them unless they believe in him? And how can they believe in him if they have never heard about him? And how can they hear about him unless someone tells them? And how will anyone go and tell them without being sent? That is why the scriptures say, and then there's this reference to the book of Isaiah. It says, how beautiful are the feet of the messengers who bring good news. And so we've been talking over this series about why we share the gospel good news. I mean, the gospel, the name good news, I mean, it's when you say gospel, it actually means in a way that it's almost too good to be true. It's this message that we have that's so incredible that Jesus loves us and he died for our sins and gave his life for us and rose from the dead. And we can enter into a relationship with him through faith in Christ and repentance of our sin. And it's such an incredible message. And we have the opportunity to go and to share that message. And so we've been saying why and what it is. And then for 2 weeks, this week and next week, we want to show you how. And, next week's a lot of the nuts and bolts will kind of come out, but there couldn't be a how unless there was a moment like today, which just says, the how is, you just got to do it. You just got to put boots on the ground. What military people say, you got to put boots on the ground. You just got to go and do it, because all the folks that went, I know because I watched them and I experienced it for myself as well, that we said at times, or even felt, I have no idea what I'm going to do. I have no idea what I'm going to say. In fact, someone's going to ask me a question, I'm not going to be able to answer it. I'm really uncomfortable with doing that. Even as your pastor, I experienced that. And I saw the team go through that too. It's uncomfortable to go door to door. What am I going to say if someone asks me a question? Or what if they don't want me there? Or as your pastor, I had to stand up. They asked me to preach on Sunday morning in Nicaragua late Saturday night when we got to the airport. I'm tired, ready to, it's been a long day of travel. My style is not to just show up and do it. Like I'm a studier. I like to prepare. I like to get ready before I do it. And here's Carlos from Chosen Children's getting to the airport and saying, "Where's the pastor?" "Oh, he's over there." "Aaron, come here." I'm like, "Oh boy." And I walk over there and Carlos is like, "You want to preach tomorrow at our church?" And I'll be honest, like the first thing I said to him was, "Well, doesn't the pastor already have something planned?" And he said, "You." I said, okay, all right. So here we go, here we go. It was uncomfortable, but you just have to do it. You have to put boots on the ground and go. I love the verse. And again, it says in Romans 10, I hope that you see this because, it works backwards. Paul uses this verse to walk backwards. He says, everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. That's the goal. Like we want to get people to that place. But he says, but how can they call on him unless they believe in him? So you see him backing up and they say, well, how can they believe in him if they've never heard about him? And how can they hear about him unless somebody tells them? And how will anyone go and tell if they've not been sent? And then he says, that is why the scriptures say, how beautiful are the messengers, the feet of the messengers who bring good news. In other words, it's just putting boots on the ground. All that other stuff on the other side of it will work out because God promises to be with us and fill our mouth and help us know what to do and what to say. We just have to go. We just have to go and just be willing to do what he calls us to do. I love that the verse doesn't say, how beautiful are the minds of those who have all the answers, or how beautiful are those who've memorized great portions of Scripture and can share that with people, or how beautiful are the hands of those who type on their phones and debate with people on Facebook about big things. It doesn't say any of those things. It says how beautiful are the feet of the messengers who bring good news. And so in Isaiah chapter 6, there's this call to Isaiah. God's saying, who will go for me? Who will go? And you know Isaiah, what does he say? He says, here am I, send me. And so I asked our worship team to do this song. It was a song I ran into like 3 days before we left for Nicaragua, and just it's been on my playlist, just going in my head over and over and over again, and it really kind of digs into this idea of here we are, God, send us. And so you probably don't know this song. If you do, sing along. If you don't, just listen to the lyrics and allow God to speak to you through them. And our prayer team's here. I'm here. We love to pray for you, but really seek now this call of God on our lives to go. And will you go? Will you go wherever that is? To your neighbor's house, to the coworker who works in the office next to you, to the person in the grocery store that you see every afternoon when you stop by to pick up milk or bread or whatever, or maybe it means across the world. Maybe it means a family member in your home. Like, will you go? Will you go? Let's listen to this together.